A warm welcome, sir, Nagappan sir. Also we have today's session will be moderated by Ms. Aruna Ravi, who is a council member of Wiki Tamil Nadu Entrepreneurship Council. So first, I will give a little bit of an introduction about Aruna, and then she will take on introducing the speaker as well as moderating the session. So, hi Aruna, a warm welcome and thanks so much for offering to moderate the session. Aruna Ravi is a chartered accountant, a working professional in a developmental organization. She has an overall experience of 22 plus years in finance as well as information and system audit. She is also a yoga advocate of yoga science. And in addition to that, she functions as an honorary advisor to the board of many NGOs and devotes her spare time to a lot of social work and activity. So Aruna, over to you. Please take on the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Raji. Vanakkam Nagappan sir. It's our esteemed privilege to have you here. So Mr. Nagappan is a renowned person in the capital market circles. So though he does not require any introduction, but I consider myself privileged to have his customary introduction. On academic side, he's a gold medalist in business administration. He has been associated with various renowned universities, colleges, and in their boards, giving guest lectures and in the trustee, as a trustee, and in framing the curriculum, all those stuff. And his specialization, I would say, is reaching out to the common people in simple terms to understand finance. He has written numerous articles in English and Tamil on investment, capital markets, and personal finance. He's a board member in various public sector, giving them advisor. He also been an advisor and been in high-level committee in the Tamil Nadu government for revisiting and framing policy and guidelines. I can add lot of him. Above all, he's a philanthropist. In addition to all of this, Nagappan has a deep passion towards Tamil literature and our heritage. So I can keep adding to his calls, but I would like to hand over to him to start off giving us an enriching knowledge on personal finance for small entrepreneurs. Thank you, Nagappan, for your time today. It's definitely, we consider us very privileged to have you here. Over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, is the screen visible?
Yes.
The PowerPoint?
PowerPoint, no. We could see you.
1 minute, I'll just. Yeah. I think it should be all right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, vanakkam and good evening to all. I was told to keep it simple and less complicated, but it's very difficult for me to complicate things. Simplicity is ultimate sophistication, they say so. I try to simplify whatever I understand. If I don't understand, I don't write about it or I don't speak about it. So a word about this. Thank you for the nice introduction, Ms. Aruna and Rajeshri. She mentioned that I'm a philanthropist, but I'm not a philanthropist. I don't give even 1 rupee to anyone, but I take money. But I share a lot of knowledge, and this foundation does that. And we spend some money on conducting a few courses in and around Madurai, in government schools and colleges. Teach the teachers about personal finance because
there'll be in 5 minutes.
Sorry, yeah, because we feel that we really feel that the financially responsible citizen is critical to country's economic and social progress. A country cannot progress when the citizens are totally irresponsible with their money. So I think that is very important. We believe in it, and that's the basic reason we started this foundation, and we keep teaching young children, schools and colleges and teachers about how to be responsible with your money. This is not something new which we are doing. It's already done in the state of Maharashtra by an organization called, they have a course called Aflatoon, and for teenagers, they have a course called Aflateen. It is done by a NGO, and they're doing a wonderful job in Maharashtra government schools on health, hygiene, personal finance, savings and investment. These are the three. They start from 3rd standard to 8th standard. And Aflateen is for the teenagers from 8th or 9th standard to +2. And then they have a little higher courses for them. So we have trained people, resource persons, so who will come and conduct 1-hour session in the local language. If any one of you are interested, you can contact us regarding that. Okay, so with that, I'll move on. Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about managing your finances for the business, but I'm going to talk about the personal finances as an entrepreneur, how to go about it. Because see, many entrepreneurs are keen to know how they can manage their business finances, but if you're not managing your personal finance, if your own personal finances yourself, then you're most likely, not managing your business finances too properly. This is something which is very important. You must have heard about, there is a popular series which is coming, this Scam. Must have heard about Harshit Mehta. Nobody made money like him, but then he lost everything, not only because of the frauds he committed, but also because of mismanagement. So one should know how to manage money. Now, what are the challenges of entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurs, they have active income, but we don't plan for the passive income. That's a challenge. Even the one extra rupee what we get, we try to reinvest into the business and try to grow the business. There is nothing wrong with it up to a certain point, but then beyond the level, I think you should get out of that and move towards passive income. And that's where people like us come in. The problem today is entrepreneur, a typical MSME. I'm talking about MSMEs. It's a high risk career due to fast technological changes. Technology changes so fast that even if we are willing to work hard and willing to put in extra energy and money, things change so fast that our business become obsolete. If I had a shop which sells CD-ROMs 10 years back, today I cannot sell even a single CD. There are people who are repairing television sets and radios. Today they are out of business. Technology changed. So you cannot be in this business like 30 years back. You take over your father's business, you're there for next 30 years and you give it to your son. Today, you cannot do that because technology changes very fast and the business itself becomes obsolete. Nothing wrong with the entrepreneur, but the business itself becomes obsolete. So it's a high risk career due to fast technological changes and no retirement. Unlike somebody who is in service, there is no retirement for people like us. We are compelled to continue, and because of which, higher health cost. It results in higher healthcare cost, excessive travel, tension, a lot of responsibilities, apart from family responsibilities, business responsibilities, resulting in interpersonal relationship issues within family. And to summarize all these things, the problem today an entrepreneur faces is that extremely volatile cash flow. The cash flow, which was very good till March, suddenly stopped in the month of April this year. And in our business, we had a fantastic cash flow in April, May, June. The business was flourishing because of work from home. The Robinhood investors, many of them, we call them Robinhood investors. They came into the market and they thought they can make a lot of money. But generally, by and large, if you look at it, whether it is a 2-wheeler dealer or a 4-wheeler dealer or anybody in business, the cash flow was very volatile. It always had been volatile, but this particular period, it was very volatile. So leading to uncertainty. So how to tackle this uncertainty if all our money is only in business and we keep reinvesting into the business? That's a way. So, and businesses keep changing. This is a Gauss principle is a very popular, in biology, in ecology, we talk about it. Or in a way, it's not exactly survival of the fittest, but then in simple terms, no two species can occupy the same independently for the same limiting resources when the resources are limited. Somebody in online business will find it very difficult to set up a shop locally, and somebody who has got a mom and pop stores, which is there in the entire Europe and US, even today they are surviving and flourishing, but very difficult for them to scale it up in online business. So each one find their place and then survive. The people who get in between get killed. Today, if you look at the business ecosystem, either you have to be too big or you can be too small and still survive. But if you're in between, you're nowhere, then you're bound to get killed. That's a problem. That phase has to be handled very carefully. And this applies to your personal finance and investment also. To understand the business as well as the economy as well as the investment cycle, it's better to understand the quantitative cycle, which was popularized by the Russian economist a long time back. He speaks about 40 to 60 years of economic cycles and various stages. The 4 stages, basically every cycle has got 4 stages. In the initial stage, increase in productivity happens along with inflation because more people start buying those products and more people get employment and more people get more money. Because they get more money, they start spending more, the inflation goes up and it resulting in economic boom. And then summer sets in, increase in the general affluence level, which leads to changing attitude towards work. 30 years back or 20 years back, people never hesitated to work hard or complain. But today, if the vehicle is not working, we see that the next generation is complaining about everything they got used to. They've taken it for granted. Many facilities are taken for granted. We had to book our scooters and wait for about 2 years in 80s. Today, you walk into any shop and take any car or vehicle, anything. I had to book for my telephone and wait for about 2 years. I have to go under a Tatkal scheme and pay 30,000 rupees to get a telephone connection. I'm not talking about the instrument. I'm talking about to get a telephone connection, what we get at 50 rupees in as far as SIM card today. I paid 30,000 rupees to BSNL and waited for a couple of days to get that connection under Tatkal scheme. There is another one called OIT, on your telephone. You pay 10,000 rupees to get a connection, you will get it on priority basis. But if you don't go through OIT or Tatkal scheme, you have to wait for years together to get a telephone connection. Now things have changed. We lack patience. If the signal is not there, people say that the tower is not there, or people they get irritated. So things changes. So the summer sets in and attitude toward work changes and results in the deceleration of economic growth. Then autumn, stagnation comes in economic conditions, deflationary growth. It results in deflationary growth. And it results in protectionist mechanism by the countries world over. They'll try to protect their economy. What happened in China, between China and US, we saw last year. I think it's part of this autumn. And then winter, which throws a lot of problem. This may not happen going forward because governments are much more experienced in handling these situations by pumping in more liquidity forever. And we call it Greenspan. What Greenspan did in US economy in 2002, 2003, 2004, to bring it up. Now, world over, every government is doing it, including India, pumping in a lot of liquidity at low cost. So these are the 4 stages. This similarly, you have cycles in assets also, asset classes also, whether it is gold or crude or stocks or mutual. Any real estate, it has got, each asset has got a cycle. So it is very important to understand the market cycles and understand that they do exist. And no one asset class is permanently superior to other. People keep asking me, sir, is it better to invest only in gold? I feel comfortable. Or is it better to invest in stocks because they are giving far superior return? Or it is better to invest in real estate because there is a utility, economic utility to real estate. There is no economic utility to gold, but there is an economic utility to real estate. So people will keep buying. So should I invest only in real estate? But by and large in India, we have people who have skewed asset allocation, investing all their money into real estate or gold or split between only these two, nothing else, which has resulted in the last 10 years of no movement of these two asset classes in the last 10 years, except last 1 year the gold has gone up. Otherwise, last 10 years, no movement at all. It's a loss of opportunity cost. So no asset class is permanently superior to other. From 1973 to 1980, gold went up like anything. From $250, $300, it went up to $850 per troy ounce. From 1981 to 2001, next 20 years, gold crashed from $850 to $285. it will be very difficult for Indians to believe that, because we never saw that kind of a fall in India, because it always went up basically because we don't have any gold. We import gold, and when we import, we pay American dollar, and US dollar appreciated. So the gold, it gave a mirage. It's a false sense of the feeling that the gold price has gone up, whereas gold price has not gone up during that period, 1981 to 2001. That 20 years, only American dollar value has gone up vis-a-vis Indian rupee. So then the gold price went up, started going up from 2003 to 2011, and then it fell down from 2011 to 2015. From 2016, it was stagnant. Last year till this year, the gold price has almost gone up by 50%. Similarly, when you take stocks, it went up in 84, 85, crashed in 88. There was a talk of global recession like 1932 in 1988. Books were written about it. And then in 92, the market went up world over. And 94, again, it went up, then crashed in 96, 97, 98. Then Y2K problem came in handy. And in 2000, you had the tech boom, stock markets went up. But then the markets fell down in 2001 up to 2004. From 2005, 6, 7, the market went up. In 2008, market crashed, but then gold went up. The real estate price went up in between from 94 to 2008. So if you look at it, each asset class had a different cycle. Gold went up in a different point of time and crashed in a different point of time. When the stocks went up, the stocks crashed and then the gold went up. Then real estate went up in between. So each asset is good in its own way, and each has got its own life cycle. We should understand that. Now, the challenge is that how to identify that particular cycle and enter at low and exit at high point. It's very difficult to understand exact entry points and exact exit point of these asset classes if you're an investor. So what do we do? The ideal way to go forward is asset allocation, which helps us to get out of this dilemma. We split our savings into 2-3 asset classes and invest in it. When particular asset class exceeds the asset allocation limit, you sell it, book the profit, take the cream alone, and invest into another asset class which has gone down, which means you are buying that asset cheaper. You are selling the asset which has become expensive, booking a profit, taking it out, and investing in another asset class which has gone down, which means you are buying it at a cheaper price. Then this way, asset allocation acts as a self-control mechanism, and it always makes you to sell something at a higher price and buy something at a lower price. This is very important. Asset allocation is a very disciplined way of. This is not the best solution. I would not say that this is the best solution. If you have time, energy, and knowledge, there are other better ways. But then when you are into another business, when you are full-time employed, asset allocation is the ideal solution, though it's not a best solution. It way to control the risk, risk-contained return you will get. And this is something, a takeaway which we should always remember. Now, what to do? Spare some time for personal finances. It is equally important for business finances. I have come across many entrepreneurs who work hard. Instead of 8 hours, they think that they can make more money if they work for 10 hours or 12 hours. But how long can you work? You cannot work, can you work 24/7? Can you work on Saturdays and Sundays? As long as you have energy, we can work, but not beyond that. So it is important when we are working and we have energy, whatever money we earn, a part of it goes to the future financial planning or retirement planning. And it is important at some stage, at some point of time, to segregate personal and business finances clearly. It ideally better not to mix both beyond a point. Streamline the personal finances at some point of time and stick to it very clearly. When Vijay Mallya can do that, we don't want to be dishonest, but we can certainly do that, right? Don't hesitate to borrow. Never use your personal savings, to meet business commitments. Borrowing is only for business. I'll touch upon it in the next slide. Plan well in advance, save tax. Saving tax is very important. We should not avoid tax. We should not do anything illegal. But then it is important to save tax. 30% saved or 20% saved increases your income by 20% or 2% or 1.5% next year in the income. And involve the entire family. Without the support of the family, without the cooperation of the family, it will be very difficult to implement any financial plan. I can tell you that in my experience. It's always better to have the support and cooperation of the family. When you look at the successful communities, the entire family works towards the common goal. It's not a diverse. If there is a diverse goal, then it's very difficult. And expect the unexpected and be prepared. This is something very important. I want to touch upon it. Most of us, India is under-insured country. Things are changing now. People are insuring more, but then insure. That's very important, particularly to insurance. When I say insurance, it does not mean that you should go for an endowment insurance or a inefficient way of insuring yourself. You know, a simple parameter which we tell about the retirement corpus is about 20 times to 30 times of your annual expenditure. If your annual expenditure is 10 lakhs, you need 20 times of that as a corpus or 30 times of that as a corpus. If you have that kind of a corpus, you can retire immediately, peacefully. Okay, that's the parameter. So, which means your insurance also should be to that extent until you achieve that amount, 20 times of your annual expenditure, not income, annual expenditure. Which means each one of us, you know, if you have an expenditure of 6 lakhs, you may have to insure for 1.2 crores. You cannot do that with an endowment policy or money back policy, though the names look very attractive and misleading. What is the fun in taking our money and our own money and later returning it to us at a low rate of return and giving inadequate coverage? And that's not the efficient way of tax planning too. I would rate PPF or public provident fund as an ideal or best way to save tax. And then next will be equity linked savings scheme or ELSS in mutual funds. These are the two ideal ways to avail ATC if you don't have a house loan, home loan. Okay. So expect the unexpected and be prepared. Two insurance every one of us need is one. When we leave, we need that insurance, healthcare insurance. It is essential. Consider it as an expense and expense paid. Don't look at any return. The problem with many of us is that we look at returns in insurance. It's a very peculiar society where nobody else or in a developed economy look at any return in insurance. Most of them don't look at any return in insurance. The moment you pay the premium, you pray God that you don't want anything in return from that. That's what, you know, nothing should happen to us. So take a healthcare policy. And second, the insurance required is that go for a term insurance where you pay a small premium, a nominal premium, but you get a very high coverage. These are the two things required. Even now we say that for a price of a cup of coffee, you can get covered for about 1 crore if you are below 30 years. It goes up according to the age. And consult a financial planner, and nothing comes free. Please remember, nothing comes free of cost. You're all, you know, many of you are entrepreneurs. Pay somebody who advises you, and then seek advice. You will be, advised properly. The moment we look for free advice, we will be dumped with endowment policies and money back policies. And execute, implement, monitor, review, and rebalance. It does not mean that it is on an automated route. You have to review that. You can keep on rebalancing it, not on a day-to-day basis, but on a regular basis. Very importantly, ensure that you have a second line of income ready while your businesses are doing well. Because of the reason I mentioned, that the technology changes very fast and our business may become outdated. In many cases, I have seen that the second generation or the third generation is not at all interested in business. So unless otherwise we are ready with the second line of income, when the first business is doing very well, we'll be in trouble. There is a danger of outliving our savings. I keep telling this. So what do we do? The three most important thing is always look out for the post-tax income. If an investment is giving you 8%, it does not mean it is good. If it is taxable, if an investment is giving you only 7.4% like PPF, which is tax-free, then that is a better investment. 7.4 may look less than 8%, but then it is tax-free. So that is always better if you are in a tax bracket, depending upon the tax bracket. So always look at post-tax income if you are in a tax bracket. The second thing to look out for is real rate of return, which is inflation-adjusted rate of return. Simply by, people think that 8% is better and 6% is bad. When the inflation is 8% and the rate of return is 8%, 8% is not good. When the inflation is 4% and the rate of return is 6%, 6% is better than 8%. So we should look at real rate of return and consider always that in a developing country like India, the interest rates are going to go down always. So be prepared for it. When you prepare a financial plan, don't prepare a financial plan with 8% return or 7% return. Ideally, it will be 4% or 4.5% for someone at 30, 35 years old right now, going for the next 30 years, 20 years. Even that could be a little less also. Better to plan with that kind of a return. So be prepared for the lower rate of return in your second line of income. And the very important point finally is the plan for that increasing new needs. We never thought, that a lot of new needs are there in all your financial planning. Most of us plan for what is my expense today. I add up some 10% or 5% and think that is enough. No. 30 years back, I never planned for maintaining my washing machine. I never thought I will have a washing machine at home. Today, most of us have washing machine, second television, not only mixie, wet grinder, or air conditioner, and we keep changing that also. It's not like old Padmini car or Ambassador Mark 4 or Mark 3, which is there for lifetime. We keep changing the vehicles. So which means the moment we commit for 5 lakhs for a car, when you're 25-year-old, we are not committing 5 lakhs or an EMI of 10,000. We are committing for almost 1 crore in our lifetime for commuting alone, by way of buying replacing the car, by way of petrol expenses or diesel expenses, by way of maintenance or AMC. So that same thing applies to your laptop, same thing applies to your mobile. So if you can extend the life of the laptop or mobile, instead of 3 years or 4 years, make it 1 more year, 5 years. In your lifetime, you can save a couple of lakhs for one particular product, and all put together, it will be a few crores probably. And we call ourselves middle class. Surprised if you prepare an Excel sheet and see that how much of the money you can save by extending the replacement of a phone or a laptop or a vehicle. And not, there is a, some of you must have read, Zarana was mentioning about the books I have written. My friend and colleague Pugalendi, he has written a lot of books along with me. And he always used to, I remember that in one of the conversations, one friend went on asking that, when are you going to change the car? Because we normally, I don't change the car. The last car was 8 years old and still it is there with my son. So we don't change the cars very frequently. So I remember we mentioned to him that, next time you ask me when are we going to change the car, we'll change the friend, not the car. So let's live for ourselves. Let's not live for the friends or relatives. That's very important. I want to touch upon borrowing. People think that borrowing is dangerous. Yes and no. It depends. So borrow wisely and borrow profitably. How to do that? Banks are doing that. Borrowing is the main business of bank. And a private sector bank in India, most of the private sector banks are doing very well. The top 4 banks are doing extremely well. How do they make money? They are borrowing from us through fixed deposits and lend it wisely. So borrow profitably. We can borrow for acquiring an asset, but not a liability. Now, what is an asset? What is a liability? I don't want to take a class. Most of you know business people, and we used to think that a car is an asset. Now we know that car is a liability. Buying a television out of borrowed money or an EMI is a liability. Anything we buy, thinking that it is an asset, and from the day we acquire, the value of which goes down, it's a liability, it's not an asset. From the date of acquisition, the value of it goes up, then it is an asset. The value of it comes down, it is a liability. That by that definition, if you are borrowing for buying a house in India, it's an asset, but for a car or something else, it's a liability. And borrowing is good for business, but bad for personal finances. I want to buy a vehicle. Let me save for it. Let me put an SIP into a mutual fund, or let me go for a chit fund, a registered chit fund, save money, and then take out once it matures and buy a car. Not by borrowing and buying a car. But when I go for business, no problem. There is nothing wrong in borrowing. So borrow profitably, there is nothing wrong with it, but not for personal finance. It is not at all good. And okay, now people keep asking me, sir, all these things are fine. We are struggling to run our day-to-day business and life. Where do I get the money? Believe me, we all know that Parkinson's law, we say that work expands to fill up the time available. We give the children some homework and ask them to finish it tomorrow, they'll finish it tomorrow. We tell them, give them 2 days, they'll take 2 days. It applies to money also. Expenses expand to spend the money available. You can save if you decide to. And every rupee saved is not only a rupee earned. This is what we say, that a rupee saved is rupee earned. No, it is all in addition to that, the return on it year after year after year after year. It's got a compounding effect. It's not 1 rupee what we save, right? That's important. So I would like to take more questions than keep on talking about it. I have spoken enough about it in other forums, and it's mostly repetitive in nature. I know that. So I requested Aruna and Rajshri that I'll take more questions than let it be an interactive session. So read books, do it yourself is, when we read books, we get inspired. There are books like The Poor Charlie's Almanac. If you want someone to gift some book to you, ask them to gift that book, because It's about $100, I think, if I'm right, around 5,000, 6,000 rupees. Charlie Munger, the partner of Warren Buffett, has written a book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. Excellent book. I would suggest you read that book. When we read such kind of books, we are inspired, and it's very interesting and very useful. And watch a lot of videos are available online. Udemy or all these people are there who give free courses, and some of them are 399 rupees or 199 rupees. Offers are there. Very interesting courses are there on right from how to start a YouTube channel to manage your finances, attend seminars, be inquisitive, ask a lot of questions, plan, execute and monitor and review, and make mistakes. Never hesitate to make mistake at an early stage, and that's the only way to learn. We have learned from my father. I have learned that that's the only way to learn and remember things is by making mistakes. That's the ideal way to learn. We'll never forget it. I'll leave you with, there are a lot of books you can read on psychology. I would ask you to read only one book on personal finance, the book which is on the second book, in The Wonderland of Investment by Ian Shanbach. A very simple book which talks about 30, 40 investment avenues in India, in Indian context. We have very few books. This is one of the very nice book, well written. Every investment is written about 3-4 pages in a simple language, and we don't need the professional help when we read this book. I've been buying this for the last 40 years, probably. I think this is the 39th edition or 48th edition. And it's a very useful book. But more than reading about such kind of books, we should read about changing our attitude. You must have heard about the last 10-15 years. This topic is very popular, behavioral economics or behavioral finance, which I keep talking about in every seminar. So keep reading more book on the Daniel. The last year, the Nobel laureate, the book, Richard Thaler has written a book on nudge, and a lot of books are there available. And Dan Ariely's book, the 3 books are there, and Fooled by Randomness is there. You can, Nicholas Taleb, such books. But the recent ones are these 2 books. One is by Morgan Housel, who used to write for Fool.com website or Motley Fool. The Psychology of Money. This book was released last month, and I'm still reading it. I've gone 50%. I've completed. It's a very nice book. It's available in Kindle. Kindle edition is there. And then Howard Marks of Oaktree Capital. I would rate him as good as Warren Buffett, or in his communication, written communication. He keeps writing a letter, Oaktree Capital letter. You can read that. It is available online. He has published a book on mastering the market cycle. Part of it I touched in this presentation. So it's useful for business. It's useful for managing personal finance. These 3 books are, I would rate as one of the best books. These are some of the books written by us. We have written 6 or 7 books, including on derivatives. For those who can read Tamil, these are all available in Vigadan publications. And the book on the center, which is written by Saravanan, is an introduction to all types of investments. Saravanan is the editor of Nanayam Vigadan, and he has written this book. And there are a lot of other books available in Kilakku, by Chokkalingam Palniyappan, by Somavaliappan. There are a lot of other, Chellamuthu Kuppuswamy has written book. So a lot of books on Tamil that is available from these publishers. You can look at it on the net. And these are the some of the websites which I wanted to share where online resources are available. The first website is investor.sebi.gov.in. It's a very interesting website where you can go and download interesting materials meant for your children, meant for yourself, working executives, business people, work for retired people, the content is available for each class of people on basics of personal finance, financial planning, and retirement planning. Explaining terminologies with a lot of illustrations like rule of 72 or rule of 114. When your money multiplied twice or money multiplied thrice, how many, all those things are there available. And it also gives you the list of resource persons trained to conduct, what we do in our Oriental, Foundation for Financial Freedom. We take some of their help, and the people or the resource persons are there. They don't charge you anything in your schools, in your colleges, where your children study or where you study. You want any such program to be conducted, you can contact them or us. And at no cost to you, they will send resource persons with the content, and they will take classes for about an hour or hour and a half. Then the second one is ncfe.org, that is National Center for Financial Education, which is promoted as a non-profit organization by the 4 regulators in India: Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, IRDA, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority, and PFRDA, Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority. These are the 4 regulatory authorities in India. They have started this NCFE to educate a common man, a housewife in village, in rural places, on how to handle finance-related matters. Like you will be surprised when you go to that website. You can see a PowerPoint on 8 slides on how to withdraw money using an ATM card. Okay, in simple language, in Tamil. I have done a pro bono work for them on Tamil. That entire Tamil website content is given by myself out of my passion. I've done it. I've given it to them. We have also done a book called Pocket Money meant for school children. In English, they have done it. In Tamil, we have done it. My brother and we have done it for SEBI. That's also available in investor website, in SEBI website, and NCFE website. Then the AMFI and other websites are there. You're familiar with it. You can look at online resources in these websites. You can take a look at it. So that brings us to an end. And I've not touched upon specific schemes because it varies from person to person, risk profile, age, and capacity to take risk, and what stage of life you are, what are your commitments going forward. So I've not touched upon any specific schemes or on that, but I'll be very happy or glad to answer. Over to you, Ms. Aruna. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Nagappan. It was really enriching. So now the floor is open for questions. Before people could come up with the questions, I will just know to have an icebreaker. I have a question for you. You were mentioning about personal finance and the business finance. So how to draw distinction between them, and while booking expenses, mainly the expense management, personal and business, for small entrepreneurs it is always very challenging. So how we can draw no distinction about it, and with that also I would like to ask, is there any thumb rule for small entrepreneurs to reinvest profits in business? So could you throw some light on that?
Yeah. See, when we are young, when we're a young entrepreneur and our commitments are less, I think it's easy to keep on reinvesting. The growth phase, when the business is in a growth phase, it's important to reinvest. We cannot take out the money. Then that affects the growth, that hinders the growth. It's very important. Like a child which is, from 1 year old to 18-year-old, the teenager, until it becomes a teenager. But the problem is, after crossing the teenage, if we keep on eating, we put on weight. That's a problem. That's unhealthy. So that's the time we have to start taking out a part of the money and start diverting into personal fund. Many people take it out and go for expansion or diversification. That's fine. But simultaneously, you should build up a reserve for a rainy days. People suffered in April, May, June, particularly people from travel industry, the startup companies, some of them I know, they've never saved. They were in the initial stages and they suffered a lot. But the very matured companies also suffered because they never had enough savings into their bank account. So there is no thumb rule or anything which I can suggest. But then in simple terms, which if you ask me, that at the growth phase, you cannot do that. You have to go by go on reinvesting. But then once you achieve a growth phase and reasonable maturity, then we have to keep on withdrawing money. But then we fail to realize that we think that we need more and more money, and we become very passionate about the business. There's nothing wrong with it, but then it blinds our eye that we keep on investing a lot into the business without taking care of the personal finances. And it is important. I have seen the most successful businessmen always maintain that gap between the personal finance beyond a point, maybe 5 years or 10 years down the line, once the business matures, maybe when you're 35, 40, then you should really start taking care of the other part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Nagappan. We have one more question from Sabita Natraj. She has posted, borrowed money is supposed to be and always cheaper than own finance. In that sense, why should I invest my savings to buy utilities which can be procured in EMIs like car or home appliance, even if it depreciates?
Okay, so the point I was trying to make was that the difference between the US economy and Indian economy. The attitude in US is that, or Western society is that buy now, enjoy and pay later. Okay, and we all know that what it started in 70s, and if you read Conspiracy of Rich online. It is available by Robert Kiyosaki. You can look at it. What has happened to those economies? I don't want that thing to happen to our economy. That's the reason I say that save and then save for a particular goal and buy it. Now, the question is that, is it cheaper to borrow? I don't think it is cheaper to borrow. Today, the personal loan costs anywhere between 13-14% or maybe even 18% in many cases. And when we buy these kind of appliances or anything, it could be somewhere around 10-11%, which is expensive, in my opinion. Of course, it's a qualitative this thing. If you can make 24% return, if you can make 25% return in a business, it makes sense to borrow instead of do that, but not otherwise. And sorry, I think I have not answered that question. I just read it. It's like a car or home appliances. That's what I mentioned. It is nothing wrong to borrow for investing in an appreciating asset or an asset which results in positive cash flow. When you're borrowing for buying an asset or what we perceive as an asset, which results in negative cash flow, that is not good. That's what I was trying to.
Yeah, thank you. Very good explanation. We have one more question from Dr. Vasanta Gauri. If you are in your 40s, what saving schemes are good?
See, we always say that have an asset allocation, but the asset allocation varies from people to people based on the risk profile, age, and other commitments. But by and large, we say that follow 100 minus age rule, which means that reduce your age from that 100, and whatever is remaining is the portion you can take risk. So if you're 40-year-old, reduce 40 from 160, 60% of your savings can go towards risky asset class, and 40% should go to very safe asset class. And as we grow old, we become 60. 40% only should go to risky asset class. We should remove the 20% and put it into risk-free asset class. As we become older, we should reduce the exposure to risky asset class and increase the exposure to risk-free asset class. This is one way of looking at things, and it can be 80 minus age or 90 minus age or 100 minus age, whatever it is. But then this is a general parameter. As I said, that one size does not fit all. Now, having said that, what kind of investments you are looking at it? My first preference will always be look at public provident fund, particularly for businessmen. You don't have PF or gratuity or anything. So look at MSN, look at public provident fund. Even if you're not looking at ATC, if you've availed using something else, if you availed ATC using something else, maybe a home loan or education expense or anything, still you go for PPF. I see to that maybe for the last 30 years or 25 years, I see to that on April 3rd, I put and invest all my, whatever maximum limit into public provident fund. I'm on record. I'm saying this because after 30 years or 25 years, when you look at it, when you're 40 and you're 65, you look at it, you will be having about 40-50 lakhs of money in the PPF, public provident fund. And the entire income it earns is completely exempted from income tax. At least as of now, that's the status. They may change it. I don't know, but they've not changed it in the last so many years. So where can you, today you tell me that where can you invest 30 or 40 lakhs or 50 lakhs and the entire income is tax-free? You cannot. That's possible only in PPF as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is anything else which gives you. Equity used to give that kind of a capital appreciation earlier, but that is also taxable beyond 1 lakh rupee last year from last year budget, right? So go for public provident fund, fully exhaust that 1.5 lakhs every year into mutual fund, public provident fund. Anything left out, now you slowly start looking at a balanced fund or mutual fund, some part of it to the mutual funds. If you're a full-time businessman, don't look at direct investing in equity. So you can invest a major part of it in mutual fund. When you go for mutual fund, I would not recommend you to go for a one-time investment or a lump sum investment. Always go for a systematic investment plan. It can be even a weekly SIP. It can be as low as 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees a week. You can keep investing into mutual funds, a balanced fund or an index fund or a combination of an index fund, which is a passive income. If the index goes up, it goes up. If the index Nifty comes down, it comes down. Sensex comes down, it comes down. So look at that. An actively managed fund like a diversified fund. These three funds you can go for it in SIP. And of course, RBI bond is something which is worth exploring till last year, but now they've made it floating rate of return. And for senior citizens, it's a different thing. You can look at people, but you're asking about 40-year-old. But for senior citizens, it's a different thing. You know, like PMBBY, Prime Minister's Vaya Vadana Yojana, up to 15 lakhs, and senior citizen saving schemes up to 15 lakhs in an account can be looked at. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Nagappan. Questions are flowing in. We have one more follow-up question from Dr. Vasantha Gauri is to just evaluate on FD versus mutual funds versus pension plans for a 40 plus years.
See, it's very difficult. You know, it's wrong to, it's not right to compare. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So fixed deposit is something which is going to generate a regular revenue for you. Mutual fund is not that. It was wrongly marketed, a particular fund, a balanced fund. Today they call it hybrid fund, managed by a very good fund manager who's got a very good track record of 20-25 years, was wrongly marketed as an income generating fund. But trust me, no mutual fund can give you a regular return. It can only give you a capital appreciation, except the monthly income plans, which is invest in debt funds, okay, in bonds, debentures. Most of the mutual funds cannot give you. It's a very misleading. So don't compare a mutual fund with fixed deposit. Fixed deposit is for generating a monthly income, a regular income. A mutual fund is a basket. You know, for retired people, we suggest 3 basket formula. Invest one part of it in regular income generating fixed deposits for running your family. Invest one for liquid, for emergency requirement. The third basket is for 10 years later, when you're 70, expenses would have gone up. The income generated by the first basket may not be enough to meet that kind of increased needs on healthcare and other things. So invest one part of it in the third basket for wealth creation, for appreciation. Take that out at the age of 70 or 75 and use that for income generation. So these two should not be compared, and never look at if somebody markets you, it's a wrong way of marketing it. Yeah.
Thank you. There are 2 more questions, but I'm jumping to a different question that Divya has asked, which is very related to our earlier question. She's asking, how about investing in NFO?
New fund offer.
Yes.
Okay. See, I generally don't advise people investing in IPO, okay, initial public offer of a company, when they issue an equity share. Because 25 years back, when the companies used to come out in public issue, they used to come out at par or a very nominal premium. So they left a lot for us on the table. When it gets listed, we used to make money. Today, when they come out with the public issue, before the public issue itself, they offer bonus, they offer split the stock, make it into 2 rupee or 1 rupee paid up, and then they come out with a hefty premium. So there is nothing much left for us to make money in the market. If you look at BSE IPO index, which was launched in 2008, 10 years back, it's still negative. So it's not wiser. And there is one more reason. The IPO market is one-sided. There is one seller and a lot of buyers. So it is bound to be skewed. So go to secondary market where there are a lot of sellers and a lot of buyers. So the price discovery is more scientific. So similarly, when you look at NFO also, I'll say the same thing. But NFO should be completely looked at with a different angle, because in IPO or equity shares, when you see a price, particular price of a particular stock, it is a price. It is not value, right? The value could be different. The value could be 20 rupees and it will be traded at 15 rupees. The value could be 10 rupees and it will be traded at 15 rupees. Price is an opinion. Value is the reality. There is a difference between price and value. And that's where the stock market functions. When they say value, but the price is very low, you go and buy. When the value is low and the price is high, you sell it. Whereas in NFO or mutual funds for that matter, what you see as a net asset value is a fact. That is the real value. So that is a price, that is a NAV, that is a value. So there is no point. People think that it is coming out 10 rupees, it is cheaper. No. If you are buying some already existing mutual fund, which is at 150 rupees, it's the same thing like buying 10 rupee in NFO. When you pay 10 rupees, you get 10 rupee worth of mutual fund. When you pay 150 and buy another NAV, another mutual fund, it has got net asset value of 150 rupees. So you pay what is really there. So let us not get fooled by that NFO is coming at par value, so it is cheaper. No.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. The next question is from Lavanya. What about home loans? Asset or liability? Can we go for a home loan instead of a vehicle or any personal loan?
That's what I explained. As far as India is concerned, still home loan is an asset. Okay, because it still results to some extent, maybe not last 10 years, there has been a lull in house price, home appreciation or rentals have not gone up substantially in the last, particularly last 6 months. First time in my life, I think I'm sure many of you would have seen it. Reduction in interest, rentals. People are renegotiating, that's happening. But then by and large in India, this is only an aberration, which is likely to get corrected in about 1 or 2 years. Okay, but after that, it will again go up of the population. But in countries like Canada, house is still a liability. The moment you vacate, almost you have to leave it and come. You cannot sell it. I think that's a state in many places in Canada. US, it is still not that bad, but then it's almost like that. So it will be depreciating in value. So it depends. And the entire economy fell down. The global economy fell down because of US economy in 2008. Why? Home loan crisis. People bought houses which they are not able to repay the EMI when the house prices crashed and they're not able to sell it also. And the houses are taken by the home loan companies. They're not able to do anything with those houses and they defaulted. So it depends upon. But in India, I still feel that home loan is better. Not only because the houses will not fall much in prices, but also because of the tax benefits what you get. Of course, they have limited it to 2 lakhs now. The interest part of it, they've limited it to 2 lakhs. But the peculiar thing about the aberration which I noticed last year is that when you rent out a house, I don't know, as a chartered accountant, you may know that you know that when you rent out a house, you can claim unlimited interest. When you are self-occupying, it is limited to 2 lakhs. It's a very peculiar thing. Why are you penalized for occupying the house? You're buying it for a need. Okay, that's a different thing. But to answer your question, house is an asset even today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question. Questions are flowing in, sir. Thanks. I think it's very enriching for all the participants. The next question is, in the current scenario, this is from Divya, is it wiser to invest around 50 to 60 lakhs in land or houses, or to invest in market when you have one house of your own?
See, I would generally suggest that as a financial advisor, I can talk about something, and then I can also talk about ethics. As a financial advisor, I feel that you should have one house on your own without any loan or encumbrance. It is a hedge against inflation. You're not dependent on somebody else for your shelter. You should also have one more place in case if you're running an office, buy that place and own that place. Nothing wrong with it. But beyond that, if you are owning a house, it's not wise. Better to look at alternate ways of investing. It need not be even stock market. It can be a fixed return instrument. It can be PPF. It can be RBI bond, or it can be sovereign gold bond, or you can invest in things like that. Ideally, it is better if, depending upon your risk profile and age, it can go to a diversified mutual fund or direct equity. If you understand the risk involved, if you have the time to spare, bowled over, equity is the best investment in terms of the returns which it has generated. But in terms of risk also, it is the highest. The people have committed suicide. Nobody has committed suicide because they have bought a house or they have gold. But people have committed suicide because they have invested in the market. So you have to be careful. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to spend a lot of time on it, concentrate, focus, read, interact with people. We have to switch over from the 8 o'clock useless debates to CNBC or some other television channel, or so change the, it's a way of life. So then you can invest in equity. Certainly, it will give you a far superior return. I don't have any doubt about it. I've seen it personally. I don't have even 1 rupee as fixed deposit. On record, I can tell you, I don't have any 1 rupee as fixed deposit. I would not suggest that for you, but I'm saying, understanding the risk, I don't have anything.
Thank you. We will take 2 more questions, sir. I'm also keeping a watch on the timeline. This is a question from Sabita Natraj. Very good question. Financial wisdom is needed for youngsters from the time they grow. What steps are being taken to include financial discipline understanding at school or college level, even for science or art students? Commerce students alone should not have this advantage. Okay,
this question takes the assumption that commerce students understand it, but I beg to differ.
Very true.
Yeah, Ms. Aruna does not take an offense. I always say that, you know, if somebody who understands finances or accounts should be rich, I think all the chartered accountants should be rich, but we all write accounts for the rich people, right? That's a fact. So I think it is something beyond that, the common sense. And I have, in fact, tweeted about what my personal life experience when my father completed 4th form, which is 9th standard of these days. And when he read a telegram in English, my grandfather told him that it's enough of studies, you go to Burma to make money. So, because you can read English and you know how to calculate compound interest. These are the two essential, you know, basic arithmetics and communication skills are there, then there is nothing much to learn about. Unfortunately, our schools and colleges, today's education system, teaches us a lot about, all of us learned about Ohm's law, which we never use. We learned about something called cyclotron. I don't know how many of you remember it. We learned about balancing the equation in chemistry, organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry. We learned about trigonometry, calculus. Most of us don't use it. But none of the schools taught us about how to calculate the EMI, which is where we are taken for a ride by many of the NBFCs, which is a life skill. We were not taught about what is, you know, how to calculate the EMI in schools. It is very important that we teach about life skills like finances. That's what Aflatone and Aflatine is doing. Meljol. I was trying to recollect the name. MELJOL, meljol.com. That's a website. You can take a look at it. We don't have that kind of a resources. Within our limited resources, we are trying to do in and around Madurai with the people. Resources mean, when I say resources, it's not only money, it's also people. That's very important. Money comes secondary. Whatever programs I do, whatever honorariums we get, it goes to the trust and we try to do something with that. But I think it is important. It's a very, very important question. And our schools and colleges have failed to do this. But at the same time, I should appreciate the regulatory authorities like SEBI, NSE, BSE, CDSL, NSDL, and the RBI, IRDA. They've done a wonderful job. Unfortunately, they are not able to reach out to people. If you go to insurance, IRDA's website, they have a separate website link. If you click on it, there are cartoons and comics meant for school children on the importance of insurance. What is an insurance? Why do you pay a premium, a small amount, to get a big coverage? How the insurance company survives based on that. It's interesting, Raju, something like the comic character they have created. Same thing in RBI website. If you go for the kids, they have created a lot of cartoons, comics books, money something they have created, you know, money wala money something. SEBI has done a wonderful job in investor.sebi.gov.in website. A lot of videos are there, PowerPoint presentations are there, books are there for school children. I repeat, the pocket money book which we did more than 10 years back in Madras Stock Exchange. We did a program for more than, you know, the school students, school teachers of more than 50 corporation schools, Chennai Corporation School. 50 of them came from 50 different schools. We did a full day training program on how to teach about pocket money pocket money book, that course, to the children. It contained 8 chapters. You know what? It contained 8 chapters for the students. We prepared another book, SEBI prepared another book, 8 chapters for the teachers on how to teach that subject. You know, this is how you should teach. Ask a question, probe, don't give the answer, let them reply, and then give a gap, and then ask the question again, like that. And there was another 8 set of books meant for the parents, which we give it to the parents, and the parents, you know, will be told that they learned the first chapter today. Now you ask them this question, make it, you know, fun, some game or something like that. So that's the kind of the seriousness with which NISM did the work on pocket money course for the school children. And it credit card, or what is a MICR in a check, or something very NEFT or RTGS, which anyhow they have to learn. And people asked us that, sir, will science students will be able to learn? Because the teachers who came were all commerce teachers. We insisted on them sending science teacher. If a science teacher understands it, she will go and teach it. You know, Ms. Aruna mentioned that how do I make it simple, or how do I, unless otherwise I understand in simple language, how can I teach somebody else? So I think about it from the simple language and from the common man's perspective, and try to convey that. It is very important science students also understand, because they also come into the market. I think to be a socially responsible citizen, it's very important that the school children understand how to manage their finances at a very young age. Why not? It is possible. There's some, I don't want to name, it will become like mentioning a particular caste, but then you look at, you know that whom I am mentioning, whether it is north or south, there are people from certain community who are very wise with finance in spite of not going to college. How is it? They were taught at a very young age. But whereas what we do, it happens in typically in, Sarna, I take one more minute because I know that we are running short of time, but 1 minute. But see, it happened in one of my friend's home. He was filling up an application form for a college. And the father, mother said that, told the father that you take it and fill it up, she may commit a mistake. I said, wait a minute, let her commit a mistake. If she's going to suffer, let her suffer. She will learn the hard way. Similarly, when my friend asked his son to go and deposit the money or deposit a check or withdraw money, the mother tells her, the father also feels that I don't want to take you to whether it is father or mother. The parents say that, no, you complete your studies, you have exams tomorrow. I don't remember my father saying that. Go to bank, deposit this dividend warrant, and then come back and do your studies. Both are learning, important learning. I think they should know, they should learn. That is very important. And I appreciate Sabita Nataraj for asking this question. Thank you.
Very insightful, Mr. Nagappan. I'm keeping a tab of the time, so I'm combining 2-3 questions which are of same nature. There was a question about, can you touch upon emergency fund? And no, there were also questions about investing in RBI bond, other than RBI bond, which is to invest. I'm combining all the questions on investment patterns. So emergency fund is one, RBI bond, and any other than RBI. And also for long term, Sharda Priya has asked, is sovereign gold bonds make sense? And somebody has asked out, physical gold or paper gold is better. Next one on investment is recommend investing in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin.
I'm able to see the questions. I'll go by it. See, other than RBI bond, any other bond can you recommend? There are some bonds listed and traded in the stock exchanges, but I would not advise you to buy because the 1,000 rupee face value bond is getting traded at 1,100, 1,200. But wait for some central government companies to come out with any bond issue. When it comes out, keep looking out for it and then subscribe. Can you believe a central government company, a PSU, 100% owned by Government of India, Ennur Kamaraj Port, they came out with a bond at 1,000 rupees face value, giving you 9.05% interest. And believe me, it is completely tax-free. In 2013 or 14, they came out, but not many applied. Not many were even aware of it. So keep looking out for it. Nobody sells these kind of things because they get a low commission or they don't get a commission. They don't market it. Unfortunately, some of our friends in intermediaries, they look out what they get than what the client gets or what the investor gets. So wait for that. But apart from RBI bond, the other option available is limited option, which of course I'm on the board of Tamil Nadu Power Finance. I'll ask you to invest there. But then you look at LIC Housing Finance or somebody AAA rated central government companies. There are a lot of options available. You can look at it and go for it. As far as sovereign gold bond is concerned, it is a follow-up question. I think somebody else also asked that investing in physical gold or paper gold. Let us understand physical investment is. I'm not against investing in physical gold, but let's not call as investment because any investment, to call it as an investment, you buy it 100 rupees and when it appreciates and goes to 150 rupees, you sell it and get out and book profit. In India, any household, have we ever booked profit in gold? We have not. Then why do we fool ourselves by calling physical gold as an investment? Physical gold is an expense. It's a lovely expense, like we buy a saree or a dress or a laptop or something. You buy a gold if you're happy about it, buy it and keep it. But it cannot be an asset. If people ask me that who makes money in gold? Can money be made in gold? Yes, money can be made in gold if you sell it, not by buying. It's clear from when you go to T Nagar in Chennai. Those of you from Chennai know that when you go to T Nagar, the people who are the gold stores are all single-storied 30 years back. Today they are all 7-storied and 5-storied. They made all this money by selling gold, right? But buy physical gold and enjoy. If you're looking at it as an investment, look at sovereign gold bond because it gives you 2.5% interest over a period of 8 years. 20% simple return is assured, and it's issued by Government of India. You can take loan against it, but whether you can make money or not, I think Sharda Priya has asked that whether we'll be able to make money. It moves almost in tandem with physical gold. If physical gold goes up, and if you believe in gold as an investment, which I believe 5 to 10% of your total asset portfolio, it should be there. but in India it's skewed. Many of us have more gold and real estate than stocks or mutual funds. But if you believe in gold as an investment, sovereign gold bond is the ideal investment and the best investment because it also has got tax exemption. On the 8th year, when you get it back, it is completely exempted from capital gains, whereas physical gold is not exempted from capital gains. Don't tell me that, we buy gold with cash and sell it in cash. I mean, talking about a compliant investor, you have tax benefit and you have a return of 2.5% per annum. You can pledge and take a loan, and it is issued by Government of India. It has got liquidity. It is listed in stock exchanges and trade. You can get out before 8 years, any point of time. So it's available at 4,850 rupees or 4,800 rupees now in the markets. It is already listed and traded, many of them. So go for the sovereign gold bond if you're looking at the gold as an this thing. And somebody has got asked for about if a property is not self-occupied and we are already paying EMI, it's more valuable to claim interest on this personally, or can this be sold to the company? If you are an entrepreneur, show it as an asset in the company. Okay, I think I want to quit this question. I'm not very familiar with the taxation. Maybe Aruna can answer this later. Okay.
There was also a question on crypto and Bitcoin, which is now becoming very popular, right? There was also a question on investing in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin.
Yeah, see, I was very surprised. I always thought that the people in cities, Bombay, Delhi, or Chennai invest in cryptocurrencies. But when I was in Namakkal about a year and a half back for a meeting, I heard many people came and surrounded and asked about, not about stock markets, not about mutual fund, but about crypto. I told them to avoid. But they told me that, sir, we have already invested, and they showed me some SMS, something. Surprised, very surprised. See, my take on it is that never do anything which is illegal, number one. And some people may say that it is still not illegal, but it is not legal. So it is a typical explanation given. But never invest in anything which is not regulated. If it is not regulated, it is a very big risk to you. So I would say that avoid when something is not, it is still not regulated. If it is not regulated, don't, because who is running it? In case of any problem, who is going to regulate it? Who is going to get your money? It is like investing in emu farm. That's how I look at it. So I will not even, but barring that, whether it will be a currency, no sovereign government will give their sovereign right to issue a fiat currency. I don't think that is going to happen. So I rule out that, but it can be a good commodity to trade. I don't look at it as a currency, but I look at it as a commodity to trade. It is rare, like gold. Like gold does not have any value, any economic utility on its own, no inherent value on its own. It does not generate any income. It only appreciates. Why it appreciates? Like Warren Buffett once said, I don't know whether he really said that, but they keep quoting him. They said that fools buy gold today thinking that more fools will buy at a better price tomorrow. That's why it appreciates. Okay, I don't want to be so harsh on the gold buyers, but I'm saying that crypto is also same thing. It went up to 20,000, came down to 5,000. I don't know where it is right now, Bitcoin. A lot of other cryptocurrencies are coming into the market. I would only say that avoid.
Thank you so much, sir, for this enriching session. In the interest of time, we will close the questions at this point in time. And thank you once again. It's a heartfelt thanks for this enriching session. Most of them have enjoyed and also have sent me personal messages on this to pass it on to you. So I would like now to hand it over to Dr. Deepa Senthilnathan to give the closing remarks. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you, Aruna. Thank you so much, sir. It was an excellent session, and your answers were very simple, crisp, and with a lot of clarity. And from the amount of questions that have been pouring in, I think it's been a very useful session for all of us. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and enlightening us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.